All right, my name is Luis Valencia, and I'm going to be talking to you about something called software side solutions. So basically, if you've ever used Amazon, Tumblr, or a social networking site, or anything on the internet, you are consuming a service, right? And if you're consuming a service, then that means that somebody must be providing a service. If that's the case, then there exists companies that specifically do services. So these companies, they need tools, they need software to do these services, right? And you guys know Microsoft. Microsoft is a big solutions provider for these services. So what I'm going to claim is Microsoft software products for service-side industries are inadequate. So some things you need to know is when I'm talking about products, I'm talking about solutions. So like any software that Microsoft provides, so that includes the operating system, maybe some Excel or programs that you guys are used to. But mostly we're going to be talking about servers because that's the most important part of a service-side industry because that's where you hold your information, that's what you're hitting as a consumer. Okay? So some alternatives for this would be Red Hat distributions, Linux distributions. So these are other systems and other companies that provide these services. And just to clarify, our underlying assumptions is if you're using a Microsoft product, if you're using a Microsoft system, you're using Microsoft products. If you're using a Linux system, you're using Linux products. Okay, so basically, there exists this company called Capgemini, and this company is probably one of the most important service-side industry companies in the world. They're a Fortune 500 company, and this is their mission statement. Customer relationship management, fulfillment must facilitate reliable, fast, cost-effective customer interaction, online and inbound or outbound communications, all right? So I'm going to prove that Microsoft is inadequate because it doesn't fulfill any of these statements. Microsoft is not cost-effective, Microsoft is not reliable, and Microsoft is not fast, okay? So we're going to start by talking about cost-effectiveness. The licensing costs for these software products are super expensive, all right? And I'm going to show you this because these are available on their site and they're available by their competitors. These are public knowledge, it's public known, it's posted everywhere. So I went out to their site and I looked at the pricing guide for Linux, for Red Hat distributions and for Windows distributions. And it turns out that the cost of these licensing fees per year for Windows is $142,000 roughly. And the pricing for Linux for these licensing fees is about $110,000, okay? And this is per 100 guests. What that means is that if I'm an employee and I need to log on to the system, then I'm a guest. So per 100 guests, okay? So the way I'm going to break this down is, I'm going to use an example. Facebook has 3,000 employees, right? If you have 3,000 employees, then 3,000 divided by 100, that's 300. That means that they need to get 300 of these licenses, right? So that's 300 times whatever cost it is. And when you do the difference, it turns out that if Facebook were to use the Windows alternatives, they would be spending $1 million more than they currently are because they're using Linux alternatives, and that's available on the Facebook About. Okay, so what that means is that if you go on their About page, Facebook publishes how much money they're making per section, and they make and then you verify with the NASDAQ, the market, or whatever, and they make about $10 million just on services. So they're just on the service, just you logging into Facebook and doing your Facebook things, they're making $10 million. But wait a minute, if they're using the Windows service, then they've lost 1/10 of their revenue, and that's a lot. This is a big company. This is a multi-million-dollar company, and they've already lost 1/10 of their profit if they were to use the Windows services. Alternatively, if you're using HP UX, I've shown that it's pretty cheap, and it also comes with all the support that Windows has. You can see online on their website they have the HP docs, they have the Red Hat documentation. So it's all there, so it doesn't really make it any harder. It's the same service that Microsoft provides, but it's less expensive. So the second thing is that it's time consuming. And basically anybody that's used Windows, since it's based off the .NET framework, you've already experienced this. Every time there's an update, you have to restart. You must restart when you're using Windows. What this means for industry, though, like that's not a big deal for us. We just restart the computer. That's cool. But what that means for industry is that you're causing downtime. So I went to an article, right, on Tech Republic, and they were talking about how to calculate the true cost of downtime. And basically, when you're shutting off your services, in layman's terms, you're losing a lot of money because that's people that are not coming to your site, not consuming your services. You're not making any of that revenue. So clearly, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. So it's not very time effective either. So alternatively, Linux allows you to do something called in-place restarts or processes, in-place updates because of the way the package manager is built. So that lets you leave it on, so you get complete uptime. So that's more on the money side. On the performance side, there's this company called the Standard Performance Evaluation Corporation. Oh my god! And basically, they do benchmarks for all the stuff that's going on with the companies and with the company software that we release. And it turns out that all the numbers clocking lower for Windows. So it's slower and it's more time consuming. I can also show you that it's less secure. There was a case study called Stuxnet that came out. And basically, you guys remember this was on the news when Iran was trying to start their nuclear program. It turns out that they got attacked via a virus, and the virus used Windows exploits to do this. And this was all over BBC America. This was you saw this. This was really good. And so, since there are security issues, there's always a lot of patches coming out. And on average, you get more patches coming out of Windows than Linux because there's more security exploits. So some numbers, just 884 packages since they released their services, 373 packages since they did their major update. So when you compare that to Linux, Linux has only done 30 security package updates because it doesn't need any security updates. And this information is available on the Windows side, on the Red Hat side, on the HP side. And the last thing is something called the Aurora exploit, which is when China got hacked by Google. China got hacked by an external source in China, and what happened was they did an IE6 exploit, and they basically broke in and stole all these Gmail account information for activists. All right, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is, if this is true, then it should be the case that everybody's moving away from these systems. And it is the case that everybody's moving away from these systems. Basically, the reason that people were stuck with Windows is because they were first to market. So they were the first to develop the tools for that. So it's something called, so their systems were in place. But then somebody in 1992 created something called Samba that allowed Linux to interact with these systems. And because of that, we can see that there's been a general trend of people moving away from Windows service products to Linux products. And you can see in the Samba wiki, which is like the Samba go-to about Samba docs, whatever, by Samba for Samba. It turns out that it turns out they released in 1982. So in 1992, if you look at the history of Windows, 76% of the computer market share was owned by Windows. And then when Samba came out, you can see that from 93 to 96, the increase in Linux server support went from 100,000 to about 3.5 million, and in 2001 to 15 million. And this is available on, this was actually part of an article published by two doctors by two PhD people in one of I think it was Caltech University, and it was under the analysis of impact of open source software. And today, if you look it up at the usage statistics today, it's 63% is owned by Linux. So there's been a clear move away. So if it's not cost effective, if it's slow, and it's not reliable because it's not secure, then we can safely say that Microsoft software products for service-side industries are inadequate.
Well, go sit down. I don't want you to stand up there. That makes you feel like a target if you do that.
Okay.
And I've got better aim than that. All right, obviously, time flies when you're giving a speech, 9.5